Alright, welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is Andreas, and today we have some more Legacy stuff coming up. Yesterday I played in the Legacy Showcase Challenge, which is basically a tournament that has a tournament series that has 3 tournaments over the course of a season, and the 3 top 8s from those tournaments go and qualify for the Showcase qualifier, from which top 1 will qualify for the Magic Online Champions Showcase, which is a path I've been very fortunate to have browsed and explored before. So before we begin, first of all, I'm already qualified for this season's Showcase qualifier. I qualified with 80 card Esper Reanimator, like Yorion, Pest Control, Plows, and basically just this strategy. But a lot of stuff happened in the meantime, right? So yesterday was the third and final tournament. The tournament had 290 players, which is a good number, I would say. Very close to what it usually is on the third leg when people are using their last Q piece, etc. And yeah, I decided to play this deck, which let's quickly address the state of Legacy before we get into things. So, state of Legacy is now that if you're not registering Entomb, Reanimate, Antraxa, Grief, Force of Will, basically very close to this deck, you're not giving yourself the best chance to win. And that is obviously not exactly a feature of the format. So next banner restrictions announcement, there will be changes to Legacy. But if you follow my channel, you know my take on those things. I play the format in front of me, and I play to win. I play to minimize mistakes. I play to make the best plays possible, think about as much stuff as possible in real time, and then the results are what they are, and that's just how I approach things, and that has helped me tremendously navigating lots of weird metagames and shifts and this and that. I just play to win. Okay. With that out of the way, let's go into a quick deck tech before we get to some matches. Today's going to be a replay video, which means I will do a deck tech, and then I have handpicked, let's see how many. I think I've handpicked 8 or 9 games with cool situations. So I promise you, you will learn from this video if you care about Legacy. So if you care about, doing well in your last chance qualifiers, or you have a paper Legacy tournament coming up, you'll know how to play this deck, you'll know how to beat this deck, both of which are extremely important. So without further ado, let's talk about the list. The land base is very standard here. We have 4 underground seas and a single undercity sewers. I've seen people started playing the second sewers, which I don't mind. I love the 4 wastelands. You can argue you don't need them in this metagame, but I still enjoy that card. The fetch split is quite obvious when it comes to polluted delta, and then the flooded strands. So basically, when deck lists were regularly updated and uploaded, I would always change these 2 lands. I would play 2 flooded strands, then move on to Scalding Tarn or Misty, then move on to the third one, then go back. Because there's just a tiny edge to be gained when I have this as my opening land, pass. The opponent is less likely, of course still likely, but less likely to put me on Reanimator. If they Google my list and they see, oh, he played 2 Misties last time he played it, there's some chance my opponent makes some choice that isn't optimal against this deck. So I just have a good habit. Whenever I finish a tournament, I change my fetches. Tiny thing, but it's, whatever. We have the cantrips. We have the free counters. I believe with regards to the stock list, I've removed the days for a brazen. I just enjoy having the catch-all. This deck is about entombing a fatty into the yard, or cycling a troll into the yard, and then reanimating it. So you have like a big creature for a discount, right? You have some good 1-2 punches with Grief and Reanimate. You can clear the way with Grief. You can discard your opponent's big creature and reanimate that. Lots of flexibility there. Psychic Frog is the somewhat recent addition. Psychic Frog is a card that is just good in the deck. Pitches to Grief, pitches to Force, is good on its own. Synergizes, you can pitch Atraxa, reanimate it. You can manage your own graveyard against opposing reanimation spells. You can beat a ton of hate. I had an opponent the other day who started with 2 ley lines in play, and Brock just took care of that game. So that card, very, very strong addition. Sideboard, let's see. couple of Hydroblasts for Delver and Red Prison decks. I have a couple of Negations for combo. I have Harbinger of the Sea, which is actually a cool one. So I can play one because in those matchups, I can maybe get lucky and entomb it into the yard and reanimate it, or I can just draw it, like against Lance or Cloud Post. Then here comes my mirror package. I forgot to say that, but my mirror sideboard plan is these 10 cards. Let's quickly go over them. Coffin Perch. The reason why this card is good, and you will see today, is when you get grief, your opponent can't take this card, and well, they can, but it's still live from the graveyard. So this card is just better than Surgical these days because of how grief works. Fatal Pushes to kill some creatures against Delver and the Mirror. Go for the Throat to have hard removal for Troll and Murktide. And then Voidwalkers to, hopefully disrupt the yard, unblockable damage, all of that jazz. So let me show the sideboard plan for the Mirror here. I get rid of my big cards. So Entomb and Archon and Atraxa, which the reason for that is if, let's say, I cast Entomb and I get my reanimation spell forced, then I'm just waiting to die out of the graveyard against a deck with 8 reanimation spells. So that's why I cut those cards. And then I cut Grief, mainly because I want to play as mid-range as possible left the sideboard with all of my reanimation. So I'm basically waiting for my opponent to cycle Troll or my opponent to Entomb. And then I try and fight the war over that. So yeah, those 10 cards for those 10 cards. That's how I sideboard in the Mirror, for what it's worth. Okay, I think no reason to dwell more with the actual deck tech. Let's just get to some games and see how it went. All right, this is round 1, game 2. I'm up a game in the Mirror, and let me quickly show the sideboard. Even though we already went over it, it's just a good habit. I promise to do better. This hand is not anything to write home about, so I'm actually weak to quick fatty. But my opponent mulled a 5 here, leads on Wasteland Nihil Spellbomb. Typically, this means that the opponent either has a troll or another land, and if they get wasted, they prefer getting wastelanded here. So great land sequence by the opponent. I draw Reanimate, which is not anything to write home about, especially in the face of Nihil Spellbomb. If my opponent does not have black mana, I'm very happy to cycle Troll and try and Reanimate to kind of get the Nihil Spellbomb out of the way. I do play Fetch Land because now I still have days up through the Wasteland. I also have a couple of basics here to make sure my mana base is never going to be a problem this game. So usually when you're up 2 cards in the Mirror, your goal is to just play solid. Like if you could trade resources, you'll be just fine. With the Ponder, I Wasteland their Source. Who knows if it works? Looks like it did work. The opponent with no follow-up land. So now this is basically my game to lose. So what I want to do with this scenario is just make the most out of my brainstorms. I can get rid of some trolls here. I don't want my opponent to try and reanimate my trolls. That's just not. I don't need to make my opponent having a couple of reanimates into good draws. So speaking of that, my opponent cycles Troll to go get a black source, and I've found Coffin Perch in the meantime. So what I'm going to do is Coffin Perch. If my opponent counters, I will counter back. Opponent did not have a counter, so now I really like my position. Kind of staved off one of the worst things that could happen. And I still have my Force of Will, so that's very good against an opponent who mulliganed to 5. So I draw another Force, so now I'm sitting on double Force, which will effectively undo my opponent's double mulligan. But it also is just a very good safety valve to have. Opponent cycles another Troll for another C. Opponent Wastelands me, and I decide to Brainstorm in response. So it looks like my opponent could have gone for Undercity Sewers, but didn't. So I need to think about what does that mean. The opponent valued holding up 2 mana more than surveilling. So at this point, Orcish Bowmaster's on my radar, but when I got Wastelanded, I didn't mind casting the Brainstorm because then my opponent plays into Daze if they actually have the Bowmaster. So I'm actually not sure. I think my opponent would have jumped the gun there if they had Bowmasters. That's reasonable, right? You're so much behind, you kind of need to take some risk. Okay, we draw Go for the Throat, and I can reanimate a troll. My opponent allows that, even though Nihil Spellbomb can target your own graveyard, which is not true for Soul Guide Lantern. So here it's basically about, okay, so what would the reason for that be? My opponent has a hard removal, like Go for the Throat, shoot the Sheriff, or Brazen Borrower, which is definitely the most realistic card. My opponent brainstorms. Okay, so my opponent wanted to hold up Brainstorm and possibly crack Nihil Spellbomb that turn. Sure. Nihil Spellbomb does not get cracked. My opponent finds the third land to play around Days and goes for a Petty Theft, which is kind of annoying. The opponent gets it back to their hand. It's kind of annoying. I decide to Force a Will to try and ride my Troll to victory. Still have a Force. Animate Dead. Was that a good draw? Doesn't look like it. Attacking for 6. My opponent's life total, I mean, the opponent could survive at 1, theoretically. Okay, so our Brainstorm here, still have Force, try and contain my opponent's mana a little bit, and now the opponent figures it's go time with the Nihil Spellbomb, goes for the cantrip end of turn, Wasteland, not very good against 2 basics. I hit my Go for the Throat on top of the deck because that's like the card in a world where I get, Grief, Reanimated. I would want to draw into that card. And here comes the Orcish Bowmasters. So because of how the opponent played on the other turns and didn't go for Bowmasters, I underestimated Bowmasters here. So at least it's only 1 ping and a 2/2, and my opponent still can't block. So let's see if the troll can get the job done. I'm at 10 here. And here's a Cling to Dust. Cling to Dust can gain 3 life if you target a creature, but going to 10 versus 7 is just doesn't do anything. So the opponent cantrips. Also, this might be the reason the opponent kept up 2 mana, holding up Nihil Spell and Cling to Dust, but yeah. In this situation, I have Force a Will, pitch Force a Will, and Daze something, which is pretty darn good place to be. Right now, I need to counter a Bowmaster. If my opponent has a Bowmaster, I will get raced. If they play it, ping me to 9, grow that. Yeah, that would kill me. So, but no Bowmasters. I think I should be safe here. Let's see. Opponent passes the turn. I attack. Can't remember if I go to 1 or force a bounce spell here. Okay. The opponent goes to 1. And I have double force because I drew the frog. No reason to play it. I just need to ride this troll to victory. And here's to shoot the sheriff, but Force a Will ice the game. And we're off to a great start. 1-0 start here. Opponent can't have anything. Let's just see if the replay wants to cooperate. I guess we can just cut it here. My opponent didn't have anything. I win the game with a Force of Will in hand, and off to a 1-0 start. Okay, so this is round 2. I'm playing the Mirror once more. As you can see, the sideboard plan I talked about in the deck tech. And I'm on the draw for game 3. I like my Coffin Perch. I don't have untapped Black Source turn 1, though, so we have to take a leap of faith here. Flooded Strand pass. My opponent goes for the same diversion tactic. I guess it doesn't work for game 3 in a match. Let's see. I surveil an enemy dead to the yard. That card is not what I want to do right now. There's some situation where if I cycle troll and try and reanimate, then I'm open for days. I tap out for days, and then I get dazed, and then the opponent can reanimate my troll. So, yeah. Drawing Brainstorm is fine. Here's Voidwalker. Voidwalker is annoying. It's a card you have to deal with. So I decide to play around days and kill the Voidwalker. Also, if my opponent tries to reanimate it, I can Coffin Purge. If that gets dazed, it is what it is. Ponder, Brainstorm, which is usually a sign of weakness. My opponent does find the fetch. Okay. I believe what I do here is take the turn, but I can't remember. Oh, I cast Brainstorm. Okay, I like that. I like that. The reason why I don't want to put Troll in the yard is kind of the same thing. I don't really want, if my opponent has like some reanimation spells, let him just be, not that good. So here I find Psychic Frog, play I like. I hope I play Swamp here. That would be the good play. Play Swamp, hold up Swamp for Tough and Purge. Play Psychic Frog, basically say, okay, buddy, you need a removal spell here. I'm going to run away with the game. My opponent does have the removal spell. And let's see what this is. Okay, my opponent with their own Psychic Frog. Like, that's one of the best things they could do here. They decided to not respect days in this spot, which is sometimes you have to do it, right? So let's see if I can do anything about this. Cast Ponder. I find a Fatal Push, which is very strong for me. So kill the frog. I can pass. Worth noting is I don't hold up Puff and Perch through Wasteland. And I wonder if I could have cast Ponder off the island. At the time, I didn't know how my turn was shaping out, but I think that was a mistake. Opponent plays Grief here. I look for Days in response. I don't find it. I believe I hide the third Brainstorm on top here. My opponent takes Dowdy Voidwalker. Let's see what I can find off the Brainstorm. I find Animate Dead. Is that good right now? I would think it's good on my opponent's Psychic Frog. Let's see what I go for. So now, okay, right. I target my own Psychic Frog, which is basically to play better against Brazen Borrower. If Psychic Frog gets bounced, I want me to have it in hand, not my opponent, right? So here I pass with Swamp up and holding up Coffin Perch. My opponent has a Grief. I have a Psychic Frog. So worth noting is Animate Dead reduces the power with 1, so I have to put a card into the frog to actually get it going. Opponent with a Brainstorm and a land. I'm not too scared about the land, though. Wonder why they wanted that land in play. Let's see. Another Grief, maybe? Nope, not another Grief. I draw Days, which is probably a bad card, so I think that's the one I'm pitching here. Here's Petty Theft. Okay. So pitch the Days. My opponent waited correctly. Then it got bounced, which is, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's a play my opponent has to make. I play out the frog again. The opponent cycles. So my opponent has 2 cards in hand, 1 land and 1 unknown. Grief keeps getting in there. This looks to be a close game. Let's see. Oh, that was not good. My opponent has another troll. And the reason why I did not wasteland my opponent in this spot was I wanted to play around my opponent's wasteland and still have 5 mana in case I draw Force of Will. So always pros and cons, and yeah. And then I draw Force of Will, which is kind of hilarious. So Frog is a flyer. I get in for 2. I discard the Coffin Purge. I think it's a good call. And we spike the Go for the Throat. That's sometimes what you need in order to stay in a tournament. So I kill the troll. Now I keep the Wasteland in hand, mainly because of if I draw the 4th Brainstorm later, I think that's going to be more valuable. This is a tough one because I'm hitting almost as hard as the opponent, but I'm drawing an extra card. But my opponent has a Brazen Borrow in exile, so in this spot, I'm like really cheering my opponent does not play this Brazen on their own turn, so I can untap and have Hardcast Force. Let's see. The opponent has 1 card in hand. Grief. Attack me to 11. And here comes another Grief. Okay, that's annoying. So my Force is out the window. I lose a land, which is a good play. Now the opponent doesn't want me to draw Troll. So here I'll give the Psychic Frog flying. I'll pitch the Wasteland to get in for 3. It's always tough to do this Psychic Frog math. When you should invest in the frog and when you shouldn't. So here I can see I'm dead in 2 turns. I deploy 2 creatures. Now I need to find a removal spell. And I need to find a removal spell for one of the Griefs, and I need to hold back a Psychic Frog that I can give flying to block a Brazen. Because my opponent will attack me to 5 this turn. And I can't kill my opponent. I can only do 8 damage if I discard the card I draw. Very, very close game here. So I need to spike another removal spell to be in this game. The opponent plays Denial Spell Bomb. Fine, Safety Valve. Let's see. Can we do it? I can try another Go for the Throat. I'm the greatest. So now, because of what I just talked about, I can kill one Grief and leave one Frog back. And then I can kill my opponent in 2 swings. So I get in for 6, draw a card. And because my opponent... yeah, I remember this. This is the big punishment for the opponent. I draw a card. And that's a Daze. My opponent did not play that Brazen Borrower ahead of schedule. They decided to wait. Getting dazed here is brutal, especially when the next news is Go for the Throat on one of the Griefs. Yeah, what a game. My graveyard is exiled. The opponent goes for the Desperation. And I believe that's the game. Yeah. This was just... I rattled off the removal spells. That was obviously very lucky. What I always focus on is I gave myself the chance to get lucky by playing well, figuring out the life total math, doing what I had to do, and then at the end of the day, I can't control what's on top of my deck, but I can put myself in a position where I can benefit from the right card being on top of the deck. So that's just the lesson. It's easy to go like, oh, you got lucky, you found 2 removal spells in the clutch. Yeah, I got lucky, and I played well to get to that spot to not die anyway. So that's what you want to do to build confidence. And of course, take it, receive it, and be happy when you get the good cards from the top of your deck. All right, that's gonna do it for this round. See you in the next one. All right, this is round 3. I'm playing against Karn Forge, I believe is the name of the deck, which is basically a artifact combo deck that is quite explosive. 0 lands. We mulligan. We keep this. Get rid of a troll here because my plan is to survive long enough that I can Entomb Reanimate. Let's see. Vexing Bauble, very annoying card, so I have to counter it. So what I do here is I pitch Psychic Frog, and I hope to draw a blue card to go with the second Force of Will. It's very strong when you have 4 Vexing Baubles, 4 defense grids. So let's see. I drew a blue card, which is awesome. I surveilled a non-land to the yard because I really want to draw that land. Here's Voltaic Key. Okay, my opponent doesn't have the best draw. Like they're developing a bunch, but they only have 3 mana. And that City of Traders will die once the opponent plays the next spell, which is very good for me because I plan to Force of Will that spell, whether it's the One Ring, Mystic Forge, or whatever. Karn. And then the opponent has lost the land in the process. Okay, so I draw Daze, which is a card that lets me cast this Ponder because I kind of ensure my blue pitch. So here what I'm supposed to do is draw the Daze and leave the Flooded Strand on top. Yep, because there is some world where I need to Force and Daze on the same turn. So here comes the situation I talked about. I can Force a Will while my opponent lost the City of Traders, and then I can Entomb Atraxa Reanimate with the objective to look for more, Grief, Force, Daze combinations. The bad thing about playing how I did here is I did not develop a land last turn. If I did, I could have gone Entomb, Reanimate Atraxa, find Wasteland, and bury my opponent. But I decided I wanted the safety valve of the extra Daze. Here's Reanimation. I find everything I need. I find a Force of Will, something to pitch, and a Wasteland for next turn. So pressure's really on the opponent here. Can't remember if they actually give it one more shot. Maybe they give it a shot. I can't remember. Okay, they give it a shot. Here's 4 mana. Here's Mystic Forge, and I can Daze. I still have the Force, and this game is just over. This deck did what it does best. And yeah, we're 3-0. Pretty nice start. Let's keep it up. Okay, this is round 4. I'm playing against Karn Forge once again here, and this is game 2. As you can see with sideboarding, I trimmed a troll and I trimmed an Animate Dead for double Force Negation. I don't want to do heavy sideboarding with this deck if I can help it, and yeah. This hand is interesting because it has double force, it has a wasteland if in case my opponent goes Saga, and whenever I draw the first land, Ponder can hopefully get me to the second land. So I think this is a pretty clear keep. Obviously, it has some variance to it, but it's like, it's risky to keep, it's risky to mulligan, and I like the double forces against that deck, that's for sure. The nightmare scenario is the opponent goes Defense Grid or Bauble, and I have to counter that. The good scenario is my opponent kind of invests, you know, some Monolith, a little bit of Sack of Petal to play like a 4-drop, but let's see. For Monolith, I don't mind. I draw Underground Sea, so yeah, maybe it's my day. I cast the Ponder. What I like here is getting a Wasteland and a Flooded Strand out of the deal before shuffling the library. The Flooded Strand allows me to cast Psychic Frog, but with this card on the stack, things change a little bit. So my opponent plays Argenta Masticore. I force will it. My opponent plays an inconsequential Shadow Spear, and now I can Wasteland the Saga, reanimate my opponent's Masticore, and now I don't have to do anything. My opponent misses a land drop, and I can just discard the Flooded Strand and move on with life. Still have the force that I will hang on to. It's better to have negation than developing a frog here, I'm fairly certain. I discard a land. My opponent does not have any zeros in play, so I don't kill anything, but I keep a 5/5 around. I wasteland my opponent here because I think Ursa Saga would be too late in this situation. I just want to keep my opponent down. I draw Polluted Delta. Doesn't really matter what I draw, right? It's just going to be fodder for the Masticore at the end of the day. Discard Delta, draw Grief, same thing. Don't care about that card. My opponent now has one draw to do it, and they don't, and the game's over. Yeah, this game is not like very deep strategically, but it's a good display of what this deck can do. If the opponent decides to play random creatures, I can Grief or Force Will those creatures and take advantage of it. And this game was just the perfect one because I wanted to reanimate something, and I wanted to wasteland my opponent on the same turn, so I just build a 5/5 and attack 4 times. I mean, it's same with the last game we saw. That's not like, whoa, deep strategical stuff. You have Force Wills and you can entomb Atraxa. No, but it's just, it shows the power level of the deck, right? That's why the deck is good. Partially, that's why the deck is good, right? Okay, that puts me at 4-0, having played 2 Mirrors and against 2 Carnforge decks. Let's see if we can hit something else. All right, this is round 5. I'm currently 4-0. Very, very happy with that for obvious reasons. My opponent's playing Doomsday, which is, I mean, a little less scary than Carnforge, I would say, but also the game, that deck has more, that deck can survive getting disrupted way more easily. So yeah, cool match here. We had 2 good games leading up to this decider. I have this hand on the draw, which is fine, but nothing to get excited about, especially not now. My opponent goes Vexing Bauble, and my only disruption is Grief. So now I have to, you know, hope to get there with Psychic Frog. I even draw Force Will, which is terrible. So this Ponder is interesting. I just already put 1 card back. I'm going to keep this because I can go Grief, pitch Psychic Frog, get it countered, then reanimate Grief to, you know, have some disruption. So that's what I'm looking for here. My opponent bricked on land, though, which is huge for me. I couldn't beat my opponent. My opponent just went, yeah, land, ritual, Doomsday. I would be out of that game. So here's a tough one. Do I go for what I just said with Grief, or do I go for Psychic Frog? The reasons to go for the disruption is I don't want to lose to Ritual Doomsday. The reason to go for Psychic Frog is you want to punish the opponent not having Ritual Doomsday. I end up going for the Frog here, which that decision was so close. I spent a lot of time on it. You can see my clock here. I also had some other things going on, but, you know, it was a tough decision. Here's a Brainstorm. And if my opponent bricks here, it's most likely over. They don't brick, and they can get rid of the bad card on top. Okay, so my opponent kind of realizes I don't have many answers to Vexing Bauble, so might as well surveil away a Force of Will. Let's see here. Yeah, now things get interesting, right? So first of all, I get in with Frog, and then I cook up a line where I bounce Vexing Bauble and I grief my opponent twice. Here I'm dreaming of hitting a blue card off of the frog draw. Wow. Yeah, I hit the blue card. Okay, so bouncing the bauble. Playing land, because now Daze is live. Grief. Let's see what we see. Let's see. Okay, so my opponent's hand is double bauble, double ritual, pedal with a Doomsday. What do I do here? What I end up doing is I grief away 2 baubles, and then I tend to force the Doomsday. And go to 0 cards and play from there. Pretty disgusting situation. I'm definitely not out of the woods, but I'm happy I found the Brazen Borrow line. 2 baubles down. I can surveil before my turn. Here's Ritual Doomsday, I counter. My opponent personal tutors for another Doomsday. Okay, so my opponent has Oracle Cabal Ritual in hand. I have nothing. Here comes the surveil. I see Animate dead. Okay, so this is a big decision and very complex. So you can say Animate dead does not disrupt my opponent's ability to cast Doomsday. You should throw it away. Trying to think here, which cards actually do that? Force a negation. Force a will plus a blue card off the frog. Wasteland doesn't help. It's very tough. So I ended up deciding that I keep this because it allows the top of my deck. So let's say I grief the Cabal Ritual. Then if I draw Daze or Wasteland on the frog draw, that in combination with the Animate Dead will prevent my opponent from casting Doomsday. This is like very close. With only 1 Force of Negation left in the deck, the decision is a bit easier, but yeah, very close. Spend a lot of time on that decision because I know it's going to make or break the game. I'm attacking first because if I draw something like Force of Negation, I can just pass. But I do find the Wasteland, and I managed to thread the needle here. Animate Dead on Grief. Take Cabal Ritual. Wasteland my opponent. Now I know they're having a dead draw, which is Doomsday. And I know I have a Brazen Borrow coming in. So let's do the math here. Now the math is I'm supposed to beat Doomsday pass. My opponent draws a land or a ritual, cast Doomsday. So I need to, right now, if I just deal 3 damage, my opponent's at 13, then they cast Doomsday down to 6, and I need to be able to deal 6 damage here, which this card is able to. So I think I'm not supposed to discard here, but I think I do discard. Let's see. I put my opponent to 13, and they... Yeah, I discard here, which I don't think makes any sense. Then I play the Borrower out, which is also just a brain fart, bad sequence. So now I'm basically saying you have to kill me on the spot here with Doomsday. You can't Doomsday pass. The opponent has to pass. And I have 7 damage right there. And it's kind of getting grim for the opponent here. Let's see if I can draw anything of relevance. I even draw a Force Will there. Okay, fair enough. Attack for 7. Put my opponent to 5. I draw a card. I brainstorm. I reanimate Grief for good measure. Take the Doomsday. My opponent has Edge of Autumn and Thassa's Oracle left in hand. And the game's over. So yeah, pretty sick match. I the bounce bauble, cast double Grief, Force Will to Doomsday, go to 0 cards, but with a frog. That was I'm very happy I found that line. It was definitely what I had to do to win that game, and I am now 5-0 to show for it. Let's keep it up. All right, round 6. I'm up a game. I'm playing against a mono black. I only saw mono black reanimator. That card could be like a Besieged Toolbox deck that could be more mid-rangey with like Bowmasters and Sheldred. But I saw like Grief and the reanimation stuff, and I sideboarded accordingly. because the deck is mono black, I shaved a Wasteland and a Troll, and I fit 2 negations because maybe that deck has Karn, maybe that deck has Beseech. Who knows? Decent starting hand here. My opponent's on Wasteland Pass, which usually just means cycle Troll end of turn. I'm very happy with my fetch land and my Coffin Perch in this situation, especially because my opponent's on mono black, so no days shenanigans. Let's see if I can draw anything that changes my Polluted Delta pass line here. Animate Dead. Okay, that card is not any good right now, but could be in the future for sure. Okay, so here's another situation where, yeah, this is just where Cuff and Perch is insane, right? The opponent griefs me. What are they even going to do? What did they pitch here? They pitched Reanimate. Okay. Let's see what my opponent even griefs away here. I kind of have stuff, like I'm insured against a lot of stuff here. My opponent takes the Brazen, which, I mean, at that point I didn't know why, but we will learn soon. So here I will, worth noting is, I draw land, but I play out Wasteland as my second mana source. The reason why I do that is, I want to look weak when it comes to colored sources. I want my opponent to Wasteland this Underground Sea. So here comes Animate Dead on Grief. My opponent entombs in response. So now, I mean, they know about this negation. They know I don't have any more reanimation spells, aside from, I guess, this card they don't know about. So I just figured, okay, they're kind of desperate to put, okay, they put Archon in the yard. I take Reanimate, let's look at that hand. It turns out they're Dark Depths. So in this spot, I grief Reanimate, but griefing Petal is not absurd, by the way that card is gone, the swamp, they trolled for it. Because now Vampire Hexmage off the top will beat me. The opponent goes Petal, Dark Depths, Vampire Hexmage. So that is kind of scary, but I decided it's better to lose to those 4 cards than use my Force Negation on Entomb when targeting Archon, and then not having the Ponder. I actually like having the Ponder here, because the way this game is right now is, if I find a reanimation spell, I reanimate the Archon and I win the game. So very, very tight spot again. But then again, I also want my opponent to, you know, be able to draw swamps, and they're bad draws. I don't want swamps to be good draws. So Petal hits the field. My opponent Wastelands my black source, which I'm pretty happy about, because now this Wasteland makes sure I don't lose to Marital Age. I draw another blue card, which is Ponder, so that lets me Ponder. Right now I'm on the lookout for basically reanimation. I find another Ponder, keep it, fine. Right now, my opponent needs to find, like, reanimation into, I don't even know, because this is even good for me. I forced this Animate Dead that they drew off the top, and the Archon's still in the yard, but if my opponent draws another reanimation spell before I do, I just have Coffin Perch, and Wasteland is taking care of Marital Age. So right now, I'm not really losing to anything, but yeah, as the true champ, I find an Animate Dead here, make an Archon, my opponent has to discard the Dark Depths. They didn't want to expose the Dark Depths to Wasteland, so they kept it in hand, and now they lose it to their own Archon. And what do you know? We're 6-0 here. That means we have a win in for top 8. Let's see if we get there. All right, this is round 7. I'm playing against JPA. JPA is also on blue-black. And this is game 2. I'm up a game. Wasteland Pass. Classic troll sign. Let's see how I play this out. My hand is not anything to get super excited about. It's just fine, right? We get to play Magic. A little bit of Cantripping, a little bit of Daze, a little bit of Psychic Frog. I draw Coffin Perch, so I'm just going to go for my signature move, which is pass the turn with Fetch Land up and hold up Coffin Perch. JPA cycles, griefs me here, hoping to clear the way, but not today. Coffin Perch too strong. Let's see, I think my opponent takes Frog here, I can't remember. Yep, Psychic Frog hits the bin. I have the yard under control. There's no reason to sack this Delta. Here I try and wasteland my opponent's blue source, but they kind of recover with the second troll. Me drawing that underground sea was not very good, but I mean, the draw go situation is fine. The opponent's sitting on the wasteland. Okay, second wasteland. Yeah, now the uncracked fetches even better. I like brainstorming here. I can't remember if I shuffle, though. I think I like these cards. I'll just play the slow. Draw one of the animate deads, pass. And I believe what I do here is I try and reanimate something on my turn, play around days. My opponent missing the land drop means they don't go for more wastelanding. So the land actually turned out to be a good drawback then. Here's animate dead on the grief. I really like doing that because you like get your value if grief gets killed. Like it's just better than trying to go for the random beater. Okay, so now we have interesting situation, right? My opponent has Archon in hand. I can take that Archon, and I have Animate Dead in hand, so I can reanimate that Archon. However, my opponent also has a Brazen Borrower, and if they Brazen Borrower back the Archon, that card is actually beatable. The fact of this matter is, am my opponent gonna Brazen Borrower the Grief or not on end step? If that's the case, I can daze that Brazen, or so will the Reanimate, and then I can animate that the Archon. My plan will get destroyed if my opponent draws... let's see. If my opponent draws Grief, that would crush me, right? Then my opponent can clear my hand. But I guess it's not the end of the world because I have Coffin Purge. So the worst thing that can happen here is, if I take the Archon, instead I would have to exile it with Coffin Purge if my opponent draws a Grief. Yeah, so I think I go for that plan. Discard Archon. When that happens, my opponent kind of knows something is up. Yeah, my opponent goes for the Brazen Borrower end of turn. I get to daze it, so yeah, perfect setup for me. And I'm still sitting on this turn 1 Polluted Delta uncracked. Just think about that. My opponent goes for Reanimator and Archon. I force. Turned out my opponent did not find the Grief. I can reanimate the Archon, and not good news for the opponent here. I can't remember how long they decide to play on here. Maybe just one draw. So Dismember hits the bin. My opponent is now left with Entomb. Oh, okay, so they keep Entomb to kind of give themselves a chance. But they fail, and we're 7-0, locked for top 8. The next couple of rounds I'm not going to feature. I end up losing the matches. When you're locked for top 8, I'm not going to say I lost because of that, but I'm saying that the level of competitiveness just wasn't there because the incentive is not at its best. Where a match like this, we're playing for all the marbles. So yeah, I just think it's more interesting to watch the actual, playing for it all. But yeah, that's just a choice on my part. I hope you still enjoy the video. Next up is the quarterfinals, so yeah, don't go anywhere. Alright, quarterfinals time. I'm playing the mirror against one of the best players in the world. Binu is a Chinese master at the game. I lost game 1. I did my sideboard plan. And yeah, backs against the wall. Let's go. Looks like this hand is fine. I can troll for the next land, try and reanimate. Yeah, this is fine. With a hand like this, you always hope your opponent goes like land ponder. Underground Sea, Grief, pitch animate dead. I let that resolve. My opponent takes the troll. Okay. So what I could have done was fetch troll for Underground Sea, but I actually think this is fine. So now I can go surveil land, try and find the next land. I don't. Maybe my opponent has Wasteland with this play. So I decide to go for reanimate Grief right away. My opponent brainstorms some response. That's fine. Grief resolves. Whoop, too fast. I take Brazen. I leave my opponent with Fatal Push. Grief Troll. So Fatal Push with Revolt is an answer to Grief, but I don't want, like, Brazen Borrow is also an answer. I don't want my opponent to bounce it back to their hand. So I think what ends up happening here is my opponent griefs me once more and kills Grief, which is, I mean, I think that's fine. Grief pitch Troll, so those cards were gone. My opponent has the land, push one unknown that they kept on top. Reanimate hits the bin. Fatal push kills Grief. And here's Reanimate. Okay, the opponent kept the Reanimate. Okay, I will have to counter that card. And now we're on this extremely low resource game. My opponent has 2 lands, 0 cards in hand. I find a Wasteland. So yeah, I'm ahead on resources here for sure. Opponent had another land. I have a Frog. Opponent mills over a Daze. Brainstorms out of desperation. Ponders to shuffle. And I draw Animate Dead. That's an amazing draw here. So now I have to choose between griefing the random card in my opponent's hand or just building a troll. I end up taking the troll for the fact that if my opponent deals with one of my creatures, like, I don't know, drawing a removal spell, I kind of want to be left with either a draw engine or a big creature that closes out the game. So I reanimate the troll. And let's see. Yeah, my opponent can't do anything. Okay, so yeah, this game was basically my opponent had to double grief without, you know, really capitalizing on it. And I got to, like, play with my opponent's graveyard, etc. Like, Reanimate is a messed up card when it comes to that. All right, so I'm forcing Game 3 in the quarterfinals here. Let's see how it goes. Game 3 in the quarterfinals is upon us. I'm on the draw. I have a fine hand here. I love the Coffin Perch. So I should be favored in the graveyard arms race at least. Opponent with land pass. I'm trying to get the replay to cooperate. Fatal push, very good draw to, you know, not just die a horrible death to Psychic Frog. I play my fetch line pass, hold up Coffin Purge line. Opponent goes for a next land. Here's Psychic Frog. So what I could do here is either hold on the fetch to, you know, play better against Wasteland reanimation stuff with Coffin Purge, or I can fetch to Veil here. And I think I end up with well, apparently I oh, okay, I see. I have a second fetch. Okay, so this is a good play. It's good that my former self plays better than the present one. I mill over the reanimate. I think 3 copies of that card is just not good. I play my fetch. I push the frog. I decide to respect Daze here. I could have tried to reanimate here. I will get punished severely by Daze plus opponent's reanimation, so I don't do that. There's the argument that Daze is good against me regardless. If they go for some reanimation, I cast Coffin Purge and fail. Yeah, who knows? Here's Frog. I decide to fetch and brainstorm in response, kind of desperation. And yeah, this is kind of actually a good lesson because if I decided to respect Daze and not do my best play, then if I'm brainstorming, okay, I guess if I find Daze here, I'll Daze. But I think this Force of Will it's very risky. I decide to go for forcing the troll, not troll, frog rather. And yeah, this is just too punishing. My opponent has the Daze. I think it's too punishing, but I don't know. I troll on upkeep. I reanimate my own troll here to try and race, I remember. Because I'm behind in the frog arms race when it comes to cards in hand. I'm curious if I should have reanimated. No, I can't. My opponent can manage the graveyard with Psychic Frog. So I can't reanimate more. That's just how it is. Psychic Frog is absurd. Exile 3 cards from the graveyard. That means I can't go for my opponent's graveyard here with the reanimate. Very, very important part of that card. Let's see if the troll can race a frog. I have to pass the turn here. My opponent will get more cards. Yep. Flying, they leave their own creatures in the yard. Get in for 1. I'm at 10. Opponent draws a card. Full grip. Ponder, Dottie Voidwalker, which is very good right now. My opponent's just looking to close me out. I draw Animate Dead, which is not a good draw, but it can kind of force my opponent to exile their whole graveyard, so it's harder to give flying to the frog next turn. I decided to go for reanimate because I believe my opponent will exile every time. So this could be better in the future because I don't lose life. My opponent fizzles my spell, and I have to pass here with my troll, which is horrible. I realize I'm not racing, and yeah, not a good situation, because even if my opponent doesn't want to attack with the Psychic Frog, Voidwalker is just shadow creature that kills me. But it turns out my opponent had the Brazen Borrower, bounced the troll, and yeah, I've seen enough. I am off to the showers. I had an amazing day. I started off 7-0, clinched top 8, had a few hours of, random practice games, you can call it. And then I had a banger of a quarterfinal here against one of the game's finest. So very happy with the top 8 finish. I was already qualified, which is something I tried to not worry about too much, because this is very valuable practice. You're playing against players who really want to win. You're playing against players who want to do whatever it takes to get into that top 8 and qualify for the showcase qualifier. And yeah, I'm very, very happy with my run. I'm happy with my play. My list will change a little bit. I guess we can round out the video with my suggested changes if you're playing some Last Chance. So I like my main deck. I'm not going to change that. I am going to change a Fatal Push and a Go for the Throat. And I'm going to add 2 copies of Dark Betrayal. Dark Betrayal is a very narrow removal spell, but it is a card that lets you do what I basically want Fatal Push to do, which is kill frogs, and still being able to kill Troll. You can also kill Grief without Revolt, which is not nothing. But mainly this is to have a one-man answer to Troll that kills everything. Voidwalker, Frog, Troll, Grief. So, and you still keep, like, this Go for the Throat can kill a Knight of the Reliquary or Murktide Region in a pinch. These Fatal Pushes can still kill, I don't know, Delighted Halfling, Nomad and Core, whatever it is. But I think going for a couple of Dark Betrayals in the removal suite is good. So that's my suggestion if you're playing any Last Chances. And if you do, I hope you win. So I'll see you for the finals a little bit later this month. Yeah, that's going to do it for this replay video. I hope you guys had fun, learned a little bit, got some inspiration. And yeah, just keep enjoying the Magic that you like to play the most. And until next time, I'll do the same. Bye, guys.